I believe that I need evidence in order to believe things. So I don't believe in gods who come from a holy book because I don't have the evidence. However, I do speak to something that I call God. And I do it because when I do it, I seem to get help. And I don't know if that help comes from a higher part of myself or what it is, but I always do get some kind of better way of looking at a problem. And I guess my bigger point is it seems to be that there are things that we can understand and learn about forever, such as music. I'm a musician. You can learn about the history of music, how music affects the chemicals in your brain, and technically you can learn about music forever. But when I try to describe what music actually is, I could never describe what it is. It's beyond description, but yet I experience it, and it's very real.
I kind of have to, I kind of see where you're going, and I get it. And, you know, as somebody who's, I mean, I'm not an expert in music, but I know quite a bit. And one of the things that frustrates me is when you hear musicians talk, they'll have a jargon where they will describe something, because there are aspects of music that are kind of ineffable that you're talking about, where you can't really describe it clearly. So when somebody says, "Oh, this is a warm tone," or, you know, this sound is fuzzy, you know, I can kind of get that, but it's not necessarily clear. Whereas if you say, you know, this is a Lydian chord, or, you know, or not chord, scale. That is more specific. So the fact that there's imprecision about this doesn't mean that music is indescribable. There's plenty of ways, you know, there's like an entry in the dictionary, and when you say to somebody music, it's clearly something we all have some familiarity with, including, for the Beth's mom is deaf. She still knows what music is. There are signs for music for deaf people. There are ways to talk about rhythm and have people feel rhythm. There are ways to talk about tonality and have people experience that. And you can say music is a subjectively pleasant construction of sound. And at least everything about that is real. When you talk to something that you want to call God, my question is, if you don't know what it is, why would you call it God? Why would you call it God?
Just because that's a word that I grew up with in my society.
Yeah, but does the God that you're talking to map to what anybody else means by God?
Possibly not, but it works for me.
Okay, you can do that all day long. I don't know what it has to do with anything, though, because if I say, I talk to God all the time, and God is, you know, this bottle of Coke Zero, which should be sponsoring me at this point. Am I talking about anything that's even similar to what other people mean when they talk about God? No.
I think possibly, because I've studied some Kabbalah, and it seems to me that from my understanding of it, God is something that comes before understanding. It's a creator, and then creates thoughts that then we receive. And it makes sense to me in a way. I mean, that to me is
it true? The fact that there's
way of looking at
okay, but I don't care about metaphor. We're right back to the same stuff I went down with Jordan Peterson. The fact that you can come up with a metaphorical thing that seems important to you is independent from whether or not it's actually true.
Right.
So if you like metaphor, here's another metaphor for you.
Yes.
Confirmation bias. You know about that? So people who study snakes and lizards, they map where they find them. And if you look at the distribution maps of snakes and lizards, it maps really closely to highways. It's not that those snakes and lizards aren't elsewhere. It's just that it's really easy to spot a snake or a lizard when it's sitting on the tarmac warming itself. So how much of this is you saying, well, it works for me? I used to think that way too, so I know how tempting it is. But, and I used to say, well, it works for me, but not necessarily, but yeah, because here's the thing. That sort of thinking is potentially really offensive. If you say that I can manifest these good things and everything happens for a good reason and that sort of stuff, what does that mean to somebody who has bad things happening to them? My mother-in-law was very concerned when she found out we were atheists. She said, what if something happens to your children? Something's going to happen to them because you're atheists. That's really ugly. And what I wanted to ask, which I never would because it would be really unkind of me, is, okay, so why are you and Dad so sick all the time?
Right.
So if you feel like it,
I'm not saying.
I'm curious though, Richard, when we talked about, your view of this thing that you're going to call God, but somebody else wrote me yesterday to basically say, hey, intuition is real and mine's 100% correct. And I didn't get around to replying to them to point out that intuition isn't real. Intuition is a label that we put on things our brain does that we may not completely understand. It's also something that's trainable.
Sure.
And it's not going to be 100% correct for anybody. But you're talking about something very similar. God is this thing that you talk to that may or may not exist that does something for you. What does it do and how do you know it's doing it?
I have no idea how it works, and I'm not saying that it works all the time and it does miraculously.
How do you know what does it do? How do you know that it ever works? What is it doing?
Because it basically, and these are rather small things, but if I'm having like a very difficult time in life or an issue with something, I'll say, "Please, God, help me with this." And
what happens?
It seems that I receive some kind of better understanding of something. It can work out in my mind, and like I said, maybe I'm just relaxing my mind and
I think that's
allowing
probably the case.
for a better way of thinking about something. But again, I do believe that there's a part of this life cosmos that is understandable, and then there's the flip side of the coin, which is life, love, essence of music, whatever you want to call it, that is just not, it doesn't have to do with reason or logic.
That doesn't matter. They're still understandable. Mm-hmm. We understand life, we understand love, we understand music.
Well, I mean, we could talk about it, but
the thing is, if we don't understand something, then we certainly can't have a good reason to believe it.
And just because we can't put a word on something, just because we can't put a word on it, doesn't mean that we don't understand it. It doesn't mean that it's of something else. So if you study music and how it affects the brain, it's pretty clear how it does that. There's no real mystery there. You can't put a word on how it affects you, but
you could just make up a word.
You can
That's
make up
what
a
we do
word.
with everything else. We make up a word. We say this word is now, Fergalburgle is now the word for the feeling that you have when you listen to music. I mean, but it's the concepts that matter, and we have these concepts. However, when you start talking about God is something that is not understandable, which I realize you didn't say here, but it's in the notes for the call. If you don't understand it, then I don't know what justification you can have for calling it God or believing it's real or anything else. It seems to me that merely experiencing something and then saying, ooh, I don't understand that experience, so I'm going to call it this. That gets you nothing other than it's a pacifier. It is to ease your discomfort with not understanding what you experience. You put a label on it. If you want to actually ease the discomfort, you explore what it is that you're experiencing and figure out what it is.
Oh, well, I'm all for that as well, for sure.
Well, the thing is, you're putting the cart before the horse. I don't know how much exploration you've done, but you've decided to label this God without the exploration that would be sufficient to show that it is a God.
Until I have more information.
Okay.
And yeah, maybe I'm saying that which I don't understand.
But if you label it and you just say, I'm going to call it God until I know different, now you're engaged in a fallacy. It's the argument. Wow, my brain just completely shut down there. Wow. Because I wanted to go for argument from incredulity, but it's essentially an argument from ignorance, that you're going to hold this position because it hasn't been proved wrong. That's argument from ignorance. And so this is why I caution people against labeling something before you know what it is, because if you label it, it pretty much stops you from looking, and there's no good reason to put a label that is used for other things as well onto something. If you don't know what the cause of this is, it would be like saying, you know what, there's a dead body in the room, and I don't know who did it, but until we actually do the investigation, I'm going to go with the butler did it. That's how absurd it is to say, I experienced something, and until I know what it is, I'm going to call it God. Those are functionally identical.
Yeah, maybe God has too many other ideas attached to the word then.
And every time somebody like you says, I experienced something and I call it God, all you do is lend credence to everybody else who thinks that and everybody else who has a different connotation of God. So every time that somebody says, until we get a better suspect, we're going to go with the butler, all that does is disparage butlers across the planet, making them look like they're criminals. And it makes police more likely to point their guns at butlers.
And if you want to come at from
yes.
If you want to come at it from a scientific point of view, talk about losing thoughts.
If you want to come at it from a scientific point of view.
Well, what was I going to say about it? Well, statistically speaking, random does not mean happening at regular intervals. It means that suddenly lots of good shit happens and suddenly lots of bad shit happens here and there. And so if you attribute the good times or the bad times, like I must be really off my game because all this bad shit's happening, it's just statistically likely to happen that way.
Great example that I heard yesterday. We're really bad at recognizing random, and it may be the fact that there's no randomness at all. In fact, there may just be patterns that we don't see. But we are such pattern recognition machines that when Apple came up with a randomizer for their iTunes playlist, they started getting feedback from tons and tons and tons of customers saying, hey, your randomizer sucks because it played 3 songs from this same album and then it played 3 songs from another album. That's exactly what you'd expect for random if you understood randomness. And so what Apple did was they rewrote the random thing so that it is actually less random, so that it feels more random to us. That's how bad we are at recognizing this stuff.
And here's the other thing that's scientific that I just finally remembered, is in terms of evolution, that explains everything that you're talking about fairly simply, because our brains have evolved to perceive things in a certain way. Most of us experience love. We all experience things that have to do with enjoying music. And you know what? The cadences in music that move people, it's universal. There is something about certain combinations of notes that move people. If you, there's a wonderful blog by Dale McGowan, and it's called Unweaving the Score, and he talks about the impact that the way music is written, how it has an impact on the way you feel. If there's a song that you really, really love and you're like, oh, it's the lyrics, it's never the lyrics. It's always the music.
Okay, to be fair, I'm going to have to take issue with that because there's a reason that Bob Dylan got a Nobel Prize, and it's not the music, it's the lyrics.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that. I have a different opinion of that. I don't know any Bob Dylan music, and I read the lyrics, and I'm like, meh. Sorry.
Well, thank you so much. I should let you get to other calls. I love your show. It's wonderful.
Thanks so much. We appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
It's poetry.
Yes, poetry, but it's not like...
And some of it you'll like, and some of it you won't.
Okay.
But I can say that you're wrong.
Okay.
You are absolutely wrong to not like Dylan.
Objectively wrong.
Oh, my God. Tangled Up in Blue.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure he does some good things, but yeah.
You're breaking my heart, Claire.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I
Beatles?
Oh, yeah.
See, all right, now we're back together. You don't have to like everything.
Beatles were freaking brilliant.
Love Me. Love Me Do does not compare to Tangled Up in Blue. You're just nuts.
Well, no, I don't think that just one song. You have to look at the spectrum of what they did and the context in which they did it. It was pretty amazing.
I agree. And on that note,
so to speak,
the Wrecking Crew, who have been on every major music album from the 50s, 60s, 70s, everybody go watch the documentary on Netflix on the Wrecking Crew.